Chapter 11. A blaring noise startled Tyler awake, and he thrashed his arm about, hoping to silence the object making the noise. Sorry, it's not an alarm clock. Tyler forced his bloodshot eyes open. Justin stood over him, a smug look on his face, and an alarm clock in his hand. Or, not yours, at least. What time is it? The windows were still dark. It couldn't be past 7 a.m. 5:30. Time to get up. How did he sound so chipper? 5:30? Dude, we just went to bed 4 hours ago. Why are we getting up so early? That's the filming schedule for you. We have to get you in the makeup chair, and you need to decide which girl you want your first solo date with. You only get one this week, so use it wisely. The rest of the girls will go on 2 group dates with you. Solo dates? Group dates? The words swam together in Tyler's head. 3 hours of sleep was simply not enough time for him to function like a normal human. Come on, Laney will be here in 10 minutes to do your makeup. You have just enough time to get up, shower, and get dressed. She won't knock. All right, man, I hear ya. Tyler pushed back the covers and stumbled out of the bed. As he crossed to the dresser, he was glad the room was spacious, but sparsely furnished. His vision was still fuzzy from sleep. He opened the drawers to the dresser, rifling through them until he found his shower items and a change of clothes. At least he had his own bathroom. One of the women had told him the night before they only had 2 to share between all of them. 10 minutes later, though dressed, Tyler wasn't sure he felt any more human. He pulled on clothes he hoped matched and stumbled out to the main room. Laney sat in the chair, her chin perched on her slender hand, her eyes closed. She'd probably gotten as little sleep as he had. He hated waking her as she looked so peaceful. Laney? He spoke her name softly as he shook her shoulder. Her eyes popped open. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to fall asleep. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. I'm exhausted too. She stood and stretched, then motioned for him to sit in the chair. I sure hope the hours aren't like this every day. I'm too old to stay up like this. Old? You can't be more than 25. 28, actually, but I feel older. I haven't stayed up like this since high school. She poured the liquid makeup in the airbrush machine. You mean it isn't always like this? Tyler was glad he had Laney to talk to. At least conversation kept his eyes from closing. I don't know. This is my first time doing the show. The regular girl had to take maternity leave. But don't worry, I'm qualified, she added quickly, as if afraid he might request a new girl. I never assumed you weren't. Are you required to do all the women's makeup as well? The question was more to keep him awake than curiosity. Laney chuckled as she turned on the airbrush machine. Nope, they're responsible for their own hair and makeup. They only spring for the cowboy. I guess I should feel flattered? The statement came out more like a question. Ha, you should. I wouldn't want to be those girls trying to cram into those tiny bathrooms. Tyler nodded. He didn't have any sisters, but he dated enough women to understand they not only took over bathrooms, but needed hours to get ready. He wondered if the women had gotten any sleep. The front door opened and Justin entered with a coffee in each hand. Tyler hoped one of them was for him. He might even rethink his judgment of Justin if it was. But alas, Justin handed the cup to Laney. She took it, but appeared apprehensive. He couldn't blame her. Justin didn't give him warm fuzzies either. Did you decide who you want to take on your solo date? Hey, how can I get one of those? Tyler's mouth salivated just thinking about the warm beverage. Justin's fake smile appeared again. Sorry, man, crew only. Nope, he appeared irredeemable. Tyler wondered why he continued to work for the show, as he certainly didn't seem to enjoy it. The money must keep him around. There's a coffee pot in the kitchen, though. Feel free to make your own, if you have time. Right, I will. Are we done, Laney? We are. She took a long sip of her coffee and smiled at him. Go make yourself a cup. You probably have half an hour. Half an hour. It wasn't much, but if he wanted to make it through the day, it would have to be enough. He wandered into the kitchen, which was nearly the size of the women's shared kitchen, and set the coffee pot percolating. A quick search through the cabinets rewarded him with not only a mug, but sugar packets as well, and he poured the drink and sat down. Justin appeared a minute later. Okay, for one of the group dates, we've planned a horseback ride along the beach. We figure that will let you discern which women can handle being around horses. You own them, right? Tyler raised a brow at him. Was he serious? Yes, I own horses. Several of them. Kinda goes with owning a ranch. Right. And the other group date will be a paintball adventure. You said you wanted an adventurous woman, so we hope this will let you see those willing to risk it all. Tyler nodded. Okay, those sound fine. He took another sip of his coffee, hoping he'd be awake enough to stay on a horse and aim a gun. For your solo date, we're planning dinner and dancing. Have you decided who you'd like to take? Tyler rubbed a hand across his forehead. It would be easier to think if he'd had more sleep. Do all these dates happen today? Justin stared at him. You've never filmed before, have you? If I had, would I be asking these questions? Tyler spoke the question quietly into his mug before taking another sip, but if Justin heard him, he ignored the remark. The first group date will be today, the next one tomorrow, and the solo the day after. So, if it's only one date, why are we up so early? Justin rolled his eyes. Because we must make sure we get the coverage we need. That could take hours, and the beach lighting is best early morning and evening. If we film in the morning and don't get what we want, it gives us the opportunity to film in the evening as well. Right. Tyler's head was spinning from the explanation. A simple yes or no would have sufficed, especially with his lack of sleep. As for the solo, I'll choose Heidi. She interested him, and she seems like someone who would enjoy dancing. Great. I'm going to inform the women. Be ready to go in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. He stared into his almost empty mug. Just enough time for another cup of coffee. Good morning, ladies. Justin sounded way too chipper to Laney, especially for someone who had gotten less sleep than she had. Was he a vampire or something? Or just so used to the schedule that his body no longer fought it? She stifled a yawn and leaned against the wall as he continued. There will be 2 group dates, one today and one tomorrow. During these group dates, Tyler can decide to give you a hat early, meaning, of course, he plans to keep you around. Or he can let you go. There will be 1 solo date this week before the ceremony, where Tyler will cut another 5 of you, at least. If all the girls cut are in one room, can we spread out then? One of the girls asked. Laney had dubbed this one Barbie, due to her long legs and tiny waist. The other girls in the room shot her angry glances, but Laney just rolled her eyes. She was used to women like this girl. The fashion world was full of them. What? Barbie shrugged. I don't do 3 other women in my room. We'll talk about room arrangements after the ceremony, Justin said. Now we've decided on the date for today, and these are the women going. Melody. The Barbie flashed a knowing smile at the other girls. Lila. Melody's smile faded as she realized she wasn't on the solo date. Cassidy, Jessica, Michelle P., Deborah N., and... Justin paused for dramatic effect as he looked around the room. Laney wished he would just hurry up. The sooner this date got started, the sooner it could end and she could get some sleep. Is he always like this? She whispered to Marianne. Always, and he gets more dramatic with each episode. But he makes the best coffee. Laney couldn't argue with that. Though she had been apprehensive about taking the coffee when he offered it, it had turned out to be one of the best tasting blends she'd ever had. Ganina, Justin finished. You 7 have 15 minutes to get ready. We roll out then. Laney flattened herself against the wall as the women erupted in a frenzy. The 7 women who were picked jumped up and began pushing their way down the hall to the bathrooms. Grunts and shouts of, "Hey, watch it!" carried into the living room. A few of the remaining women got up and wandered toward the kitchen. The few that remained began a conversation about where they thought the date was taking place and who might be lucky enough to get the solo. What do the women not going do all day? Laney asked Marianne. With no television and no phone, she wondered what they had to amuse themselves. Most of the time, they just lie around the pool and talk. They also have a small workout room and a closet full of games. Games? Marianne flashed a mischievous smile. Yep, old-fashioned board games. If they get too bored, they'll pull them out. It's generally good comedy when they find the Twister game. Laney shook her head. She'd thought this was a serious reality show, but the more she learned, the less serious it seemed. She straightened as Justin made his way over to them. Laney, you need to grab your supplies and head out front. You'll be riding with Tyler to the location. Oh, okay. Laney tried to control the fluttering in her heart at the thought of riding alone with Tyler, if only it were under different circumstances. "Guess I'll see you there," she said to Marianne before heading out to grab her supplies. She packed everything she thought she might need in her travel case and then glanced in the mirror. She couldn't compare to the contestants, but that was no reason not to look her best. As she exited her bungalow, she saw Tyler leaning against a black limo, his hat pulled low on his eyes. "Hey," he said when she approached. "I guess we're riding together." "That's what they tell me." Her voice sounded trembly in her ears, and she hoped he wouldn't notice. He opened the door for her and stepped back. "I'm rather glad. You can punch me if I fall asleep." Laney laughed as she climbed into the limo. "I thought that was your job, to keep me awake." "I guess we'll have to look out for each other." He climbed in beside her and shut the door. Laney's pulse quickened at the nearness of his body. His hand lay only inches from hers on the seat, and she was close enough to feel the heat radiating off of him. Wall. She needed her wall. "So, tell me about your ranch." Maybe conversation would take her mind off the masculine scent of him that was wafting her direction. A smile lit his features. "It's a nice place, 600 acres with a creek bed that runs through it. In the evenings, you can see the sunset for miles. Oranges, reds, and pinks. Nothing beats a Texas sunset, am I right?" It had been ages since Laney had seen a Texas sunset. Even when she'd stopped home briefly, she hadn't taken the time to step outside and watch the sun set. But she did remember enjoying them in high school. She also remembered wishing Dallas Nixon would invite her out to the lookout point all the popular kids frequented Friday nights when football season was over. "Yeah, nothing beats a Texas sunset. I bet it's even better on horseback." "It is. There's this great spot at my ranch where the sun glistens off the creek." He trailed off, and Laney knew he was thinking the same thing she was. She'd probably never get to see that view on his ranch, because he'd be sharing it with some other woman. Laney cursed the timing of their meeting. "It sounds lovely," Laney said, and then she flew forward. Her head collided with Tyler's jaw, and stars filled her vision. "Sorry about that," the driver's voice said through the intercom. "Some kid chased a ball into the street." "Are you hurt?" Tyler asked. His hands were on her face, sending shots of heat every place his fingers touched. But Laney couldn't focus on his face. She was still seeing double. "I think I'm okay, but man, you have a hard jaw." His hands dropped from her face, and she blinked a few times until the stars receded, and his two faces became one again. Was he smiling at her? "Yeah, so I've been told." "You've had a lot of people hit your jaw?" His smile faded, and his eyes shifted to the side. "Not anymore." Laney could tell there was more behind his answer, but his face had turned to stone, and she knew better than to press the issue. Perhaps he would tell her when he was ready.